Let me tell you about three guys I'll call Derek, Marcus, and Paul. Same city, same general age range. All three consider themselves reasonably successful. All three have jobs they are mostly okay with. All three would tell you they are doing fine. Derek has a net worth of about $12,000. Marcus has a net worth of $180,000. Paul has a net worth of $1.2 million. Here is what is interesting. None of them feel rich. Derek feels broke. Marcus feels okay but anxious. Paul feels something different from both of them, something neither Derek nor Marcus can fully describe yet because they have not been there. The difference between these three men is not income. It is not luck. It is not even how hard they work. It is where they sit on what I call the net worth ladder. And at three specific levels on that ladder, something changes. Not just in your bank account, in how the world treats you, in how you sleep, in how you make decisions, in how other people talk to you. My name is Nick, and today we are going to walk through exactly what those three levels are, what changes at each one, and what the math looks like to get from where you are to where life actually starts feeling different. Because most people spend their entire lives optimizing for income when the number that actually changes your life is net worth. And those are not the same thing. Let's go. Level 1, $0 to $100,000, the survival zone. This is where most Americans live. According to the Federal Reserve's most recent survey of consumer finances, the median American net worth is about $192,000. But that number is pulled up by the wealthy. The median for Americans under 35 is closer to $39,000. For Americans 35 to 44, it sits around $135,000. Which means a huge percentage of working adults with decent jobs are somewhere in this first zone. Here is what life feels like here. Every unexpected expense is a crisis. Car needs a repair, that is a problem. Medical bill arrives, that is a problem. Job gets shaky, that is a serious problem. There is no cushion. There is no margin. Every month is a math problem where the goal is to not go backwards. Derek is here. He earns $68,000 a year. He is not irresponsible. He has a 401k. He pays his bills. But his net worth is $12,000, most of which is his car, which is a depreciating asset. His liquid savings are maybe $4,000. He is one bad month from credit card debt. He is two bad months from real trouble. And here is the psychological reality of this zone that nobody talks about. The stress is not just financial. It is cognitive. Research from Princeton economists Sendhil Mullainathan and Eldar Shafir found that financial scarcity consumes roughly 13 IQ points worth of cognitive bandwidth. The mental load of being broke, of constantly calculating whether you can afford something, of worrying about what happens if something goes wrong. That load is equivalent to going through life significantly sleep-deprived. Derek is not making bad decisions because he is not smart. He is making some suboptimal decisions because his brain is running a background process 24 hours a day called "Can I afford this?" and what happens if something breaks. The escape from this level is not a raise. It is a specific number. The first real milestone is $25,000 in liquid accessible savings, not invested. Not in a 401k you cannot touch without penalty. Liquid, cash or near cash. When you hit $25,000 liquid, the nature of the stress changes. Small emergencies stop being emergencies. A $2,000 car repair is annoying instead of catastrophic. That psychological shift is real and measurable. The second milestone in this zone is getting your total net worth to $100,000. It sounds arbitrary, but it is not. At $100,000 net worth, compounding starts doing meaningful work. At 8% annual return, $100,000 generates $8,000 a year in growth without you adding anything. That is $666 a month in passive growth. Not enough to live on, but enough to notice. Enough to feel like the math is starting to work with you instead of against you. Getting from $0 to $100,000 is the hardest stretch of the entire journey. It requires the most discipline for the least visible reward, but it is also the foundation everything else is built on. Level 2, $100,000 to $500,000, the stability zone. This is where Marcus lives. $180,000 net worth, mostly in a 401k and a small amount of home equity. He is doing better than most people his age. He knows that, but he does not feel wealthy. He does not feel free. He feels stable mostly, with an undercurrent of anxiety that never fully goes away. Here is what changes when you enter this zone, and what is still missing. What changes first is optionality. At $100,000 net worth, you start having choices you did not have before. You can take a slightly lower paying job you actually like because you have a financial cushion. You can negotiate harder with your employer because walking away does not mean immediate disaster. You can say no to things that do not serve you without the panic that comes from having nothing behind you. Marcus recently turned down an extra project at work that would have paid him $8,000 but would have consumed his weekends for 3 months. 2 years ago, he would have taken it without thinking. Now, he has enough of a cushion to ask whether his time is worth more than the money. That is a new kind of thinking. That is what net worth buys you. What also changes in this zone is how creditors and institutions treat you. This sounds cynical, but it is just true. Banks offer you better rates. Landlords approve your applications without stress. Employers sense the quiet confidence of someone who does not desperately need the job. Money creates social signals that compound in your favor whether you are aware of it or not. But here is what has not changed yet for Marcus. He is still not free. His lifestyle is still entirely dependent on his paycheck. If his income stopped tomorrow, his $180,000 would last him roughly 3 years at his current spending rate. 3 years sounds like a lot until you think about how long it takes to rebuild a career, how long health issues can last, how unpredictable life actually is. The critical threshold in this zone is the point where your investments generate enough passive income to cover your basic expenses. For most people, that means somewhere between $300,000 and $500,000 invested, depending on your monthly nut. At a 4% safe withdrawal rate, $300,000 generates $12,000 a year. $500,000 generates $20,000 a year. That is not full financial independence for most people, but it is the point where your money starts being able to cover your rent, your utilities, your groceries, where your base survival is no longer entirely dependent on showing up to work. That shift in psychology is enormous. It is not retirement. It is something quieter and more powerful. It is knowing that even if everything went sideways, you would not be on the street. You would be okay. The baseline fear that sits under most people's daily life, the fear that one bad event could unravel everything, that fear starts losing its grip somewhere in this zone. Marcus is not there yet. He is on his way, but he can feel the difference between his life now and Derek's. The math is starting to feel like it is on his side. Level 3, $500,000 to $1 million and beyond, the freedom zone. This is where Paul lives. $1.2 million net worth, mostly invested, some home equity, a small rental property generating passive income. And here is what Paul will tell you if you ask him honestly about money. He does not think about it the same way anymore. Not because he is careless, not because he is reckless, because the background process that consumed Derek's cognitive bandwidth and still occasionally interrupts Marcus's sleep just does not run for Paul the way it used to. The math has crossed a threshold where his money is generating enough growth and income that the direction of his financial life is no longer in serious question. Barring catastrophic decisions, Paul is going to be fine, and his brain knows it. Here is what specifically changes at this level that does not exist at the lower levels. Time becomes the primary currency. Paul turns down things that pay well but cost him time without hesitation. He did not always have that clarity. When he had less money, his default was to say yes to income. Now his default is to ask, what does this cost me in time and freedom? That reversal is one of the most significant quality of life changes that comes with hitting this level, and it is almost never mentioned in financial content. Medical decisions change. At Derek's level, people delay doctor visits because of cost. They skip procedures. They manage symptoms instead of causes because the alternative is a bill they cannot absorb. At Paul's level, this entire calculus disappears. He goes to the best doctor he can find. He does the recommended tests. He does not gamble with his health because of money. That is not a luxury. Over a lifetime, it is one of the largest quality of life differences that money creates. Relationship dynamics shift. This is uncomfortable to say, but it is real. At lower net worth levels, financial stress is one of the leading causes of relationship conflict. Arguments about money, about spending, about financial decisions. At Paul's level, those arguments largely stop. Not because money solves relationship problems, because removing constant financial pressure removes one of the most persistent sources of friction from daily life. And here is the number within this zone that represents the final threshold. For most middle-income Americans, the point at which work becomes fully optional sits somewhere between $1.5 million and $2.5 million invested, depending on your lifestyle costs. That is the number where a 4% annual withdrawal covers your full lifestyle indefinitely, where you could stop working tomorrow and your financial life would be fine for the rest of your life. Paul is not fully there yet, but he can see it. More importantly, he can feel that he is going to get there. That visibility into your own future financial security is itself one of the most profound psychological benefits of reaching this zone. The question shifts from will I be okay to when will I be completely free? That is a fundamentally different way to move through the world. So there are the 3 levels. The survival zone, where the goal is building your first $100,000 and eliminating the cognitive tax of financial scarcity. The stability zone, where optionality starts appearing, where the baseline fear softens, where you begin to have real choices about how you spend your time. And the freedom zone where time becomes your primary currency, where the background financial anxiety that most people carry every day of their adult life finally, genuinely, goes quiet. Derek, Marcus, and Paul all started somewhere close to the same place. The differences between them are not income differences. They are accumulation rate differences. They are savings rate differences. They are compounding time differences. Here is what I want you to take from this. Most people spend their entire working lives optimizing for income. Bigger salary, better title, higher hourly rate, and income matters. But income without accumulation is a treadmill. You can earn $200,000 a year and stay stuck in the survival zone if you spend $200,000 a year. And you can earn $70,000 a year and reach the freedom zone in your 50s if your accumulation rate is high enough and you start early enough. The number that changes your life is not on your pay stub. It is on your net worth statement. Here is the one sentence to take from this video. Income is what